Welcome to Chapter 7, our final chapter in this sequence, where we explore contemporary integrative theories. Unlike previous chapters that focused on either macro or micro perspectives, this chapter examines theoretical efforts to bridge the gap between large-scale structures and everyday interactions. These theories represent some of the most sophisticated attempts in modern sociology to deal with the full range of micro-macro issues in a more comprehensive fashion. Our learning objectives focus on understanding how contemporary theorists have worked to create more integrative approaches. You'll learn to analyze Emerson's sophisticated exchange theory that moves beyond individual psychology to include networks and structure. You'll evaluate Giddens' structuration theory and its central insight about the duality of structure and agency. We'll examine Bourdieu's influential concepts of habitus and field that bridge subjective and objective approaches. You'll compare different strategies for integration and assess feminist contributions to this project. Finally, you'll synthesize how these approaches overcome traditional divisions in sociology theory. Today, we'll explore four major approaches to theoretical integration. We'll start with Emerson's sophisticated exchange theory that moves beyond individual behavior to examine networks and macro-level structures. Then we'll study Giddens' structuration theory, one of the most influential attempts to overcome the agency-structure divide. We'll examine Bourdieu's theory of practice with its concepts of habitus and field. Finally, we'll look at feminist integrative approaches that address both theoretical integration and issues of power and inequality. Each represents a different strategy for creating a more comprehensive sociological theory. Before diving into specific theories, it's important to understand why integration matters. Traditional sociology has been divided between macro approaches that focus on large-scale structures and institutions, and micro approaches that examine individual interactions in everyday life. The agency structure debate has been central to sociology. Do people shape society through their actions, or does society shape people through its structures? The reality is that social life involves complex interactions between these levels. A student's educational success, for example, involves individual choices and efforts, but also school funding, cultural capital, family background, and broader economic opportunities. Integrative theories attempt to capture this complexity. Emerson developed a more sophisticated version of exchange theory that moves well beyond Hohmann's individual psychological approach. Emerson introduced the concept of exchange networks, webs of social relationships involving multiple actors who have various valued resources and exchange opportunities. His power dependence theory shows how power emerges from the structure of relationships rather than individual characteristics. Most importantly, Emerson demonstrated how macro-level network structures affect individual behavior, while individual exchanges aggregate to create macro-level patterns. This represents a true integration of psychological and structural factors. Emerson's power dependence theory provides crucial insights into how power operates in social relationships. Power is defined as the potential cost that one actor can induce another to accept, while dependence is the cost an actor is willing to tolerate to maintain a relationship. When dependence is equal, Relationships are balanced. When one actor depends more on the relationship than the other, power imbalances emerge. Crucially, these power relationships are embedded within larger exchange networks. So an actor's power depends not just on their direct relationship with another person, but on their position within the broader network structure. Exchange networks demonstrate how structure shapes individual behavior in concrete ways. An actor's position in the network determines their access to valued resources and alternative exchange partners. Those with multiple partners have structural advantages over those with fewer options. Relationships are contingent. What happens in one exchange affects possibilities in others. Networks develop emergent properties that cannot be reduced to individual psychology or preferences. This creates a genuine micro-macro linkage where individual exchanges both create and are constrained by network structures. A person's bargaining power in any relationship depends partly on their alternatives elsewhere in the network. Giddens developed structuration theory to overcome the traditional agency structure divide through his concept of duality. Rather than seeing agency and structure as separate forces, Giddens argues there are two sides of the same coin. You cannot have one without the other. Structure consists of rules and resources that give social practices their systemic form, while agency refers to people's ability to make a difference in the social world. The key insight is that structures are both the medium and outcome of social practices. People use existing structures to act, but through their actions they also reproduce and potentially transform those structures. This is a recursive process that occurs across time and space. Giddens offers an unconventional definition of structure that avoids treating it as external to human action. Structure consists of rules, procedures that actors follow, and resources, capabilities that actors use. Importantly, structures exist only through human action and memory. They don't have independent existence like buildings or institutions. Language is a perfect example. Grammatical rules and vocabulary exist only because people use them, but they also enable communication while constraining what can be easily expressed. Structure both enables and constrains action simultaneously, and they can be transformed through practice as people apply rules in new ways or develop new capabilities. Giddens distinguishes between different levels of consciousness that guide social action. Practical consciousness involves actions that people take for granted without being able to express them in words, like how to maintain appropriate personal space in conversation or how to show respect in different contexts. Discursive consciousness covers things people can verbally describe and explain. There's also unconscious motivation that drives action but remains hidden from awareness. Most importantly, actions often have unintended consequences that go beyond what actors intended. Much of social life operates at the practical consciousness level, where people skillfully navigate complex social situations without explicitly thinking about the rules they are following. Giddens uses the concept of social systems to explain how society reproduces itself over time and space. Social systems reproduce social patterns, regular patterns of interaction like educational systems, economic markets, or family structures. These are not structures themselves, but rather the patterned relationships where structures are instantiated through human agency. Social integration across time and space creates social order, as practices that work in one context get reproduced in others. However, transformation is also possible because humans are reflexive agents who can consciously alter their practices. This explains both social stability and social change within the same theoretical framework. Bourdieu sought to overcome what he saw as the false opposition between objectivism and subjectivism in social theory. Rather than choosing between structural determination and individual freedom, Bourdieu focuses on practice as the outcome of a dialectical relationship between structure and agency. His approach, which he calls genetic structuralism, involves studying objective structures that cannot be separated from the mental structures people use to perceive and construct the social world. This constructivist perspective shows how schemes of perception both reflect and create social structures. The heart of Bourdieu's theory lies in understanding the relationship between habitus, which is mental structures, and field, which are objective structures. Habitus is Bourdieu's most famous and important concept. It refers to the mental or cognitive structures through which people deal with the social world, their internalized dispositions, taste, and ways of perceiving. Habitus is the product of internalizing objective social structures, particularly through early socialization experiences. It's durable, meaning it persists over time, but also transposable, meaning people can apply it in new situations. Habitus generates practices and perceptions without conscious calculation. It operates through practical logic rather than formal rationality. This explains why people from similar class backgrounds often make similar choices, even in very different circumstances. Field represents the objective side of Bourdieu's analysis. A field is a network of relationships among objective positions. It's an arena where social struggles play out as people compete for advantageous positions. Fields are semi-autonomous, meaning they have their own specific logic and rules, though they are connected to other fields. Bourdieu identifies four main types of capital: economic, money and material resources; cultural, which is legitimate knowledge and cultural competence; social, which is valuable social relationships; and symbolic, honor and prestige. An actor's position in any field is determined by the amount and type of capital they possess. Different fields value different types of capital. The relationship between habitus and field is dynamically interactive. Habitus shapes how people perceive opportunities and threats within fields, while fields provide the context where habitus operates and develops. They mutually constitute each other. Habitus helps create and maintain field structures, while field experience shape and modify habitus. Sometimes there's hysterias, where someone's habitus becomes inappropriate for current field conditions, like when social mobility puts people in unfamiliar class environments. Importantly, this interaction produces what Bourdieu calls strategy without strategic calculation. People act strategically to improve their position, but they do so through practical sense rather than conscious planning. Bourdieu's analysis of cultural capital shows how class operates through culture rather than just economics. Cultural preferences for certain types of music, food, art, or leisure activities both reflect and reinforce class positions. Taste serves a double function. It unifies people with similar class backgrounds while differentiating them from other classes. The educational system plays a crucial role by legitimating cultural capital as individual merit rather than class privilege. This creates symbolic violence, the imposition of dominant culture as natural and legitimate rather than arbitrary. Through these cultural mechanisms, class structures reproduce themselves across generations, even when there's economic mobility. Bourdieu advocated for reflexive sociology, arguing that sociologists must examine their own position within the academic field and broader social structures. Scientific claims are not neutral, but also assertions of power and position. True objectification requires understanding one's own subjectivity and how it shapes analysis. This involves meta-theoretical analysis of sociology itself, understanding how the discipline structure affects what gets studied and how. Bourdieu wanted sociologists to avoid being, quote, toys of social forces by becoming conscious of the forces acting on them. This reflexive approach is essential for producing more objective and less biased social analysis. Feminist integrative theory offers one of the most comprehensive approaches to overcoming traditional sociological division. It combines economic, political, and cultural analysis while addressing both structural constraints and human agency. Standpoint epistemology argues that knowledge is always produced from particular social positions, and women's subordinate position provides unique insights into how society operates. Intersectionality shows how multiple systems of oppression, gender, race, class, sexuality, interact in complex ways. Feminist theory focused on embodied subjects rather than the abstract individuals of rational choice theory, recognizing that people's social positions fundamentally shape their experiences and possibilities. Standpoint theory makes the crucial argument that all knowledge is produced from particular social positions rather than from some neutral objective standpoint. Women's subordinated position in society provides unique analytical insights precisely because they experience the contradictions between dominant ideologies and lived reality. What appeared to be universal perspectives actually reflect the experiences and interests of privileged groups. Women and other subordinate groups develop oppositional consciousness by experiencing these contradictions daily. Feminist theorists have developed four main strategies for transforming sociological practice: asserting validity of women's experiences, privileging accounts of the less empowered, creating reflexive sociology, and identifying the theorist's own social locations. Smith developed the concept of relations of ruling to describe complex, non-monolithic, but intricately connected social activities that attempt to control human social production. These relations operate through textualized practices, documents, forms, procedures, reports that coordinate activities across time and space. Unlike traditional forms of personal domination, relations of ruling are impersonal but highly coordinated. People's local actualities, their everyday lived experiences, are increasingly shaped by these distant relations of ruling. Women's experience provide particular insight into how these systems operate because women often do the work of translating between official institutional requirements and the actual needs of daily life. Feminist methodology often employs webbed accounts, ways of integrating multiple perspectives by weaving together accounts from various actors' experiences, rather than privileging a single authoritative perspective. This approach describes situations and power dynamics from multiple standpoints to create more comprehensive understanding of complex social processes. Knowledge is validated through the convergence of multiple perspectives rather than appeals to single authorities. This represents a more democratic approach to knowledge production that recognizes the partial nature of any single viewpoint while building more complete pictures through integration of diverse experiences. These integrative approaches use different strategies but share common goals. Emerson uses network analysis to show how exchange relationships create emergent structural properties while remaining grounded in individual behavior. Giddens employs the concept of duality to argue that agency and structure are inseparable aspects of social life. Bourdieu develops practice theory to bridge objective and subjective approaches through the relationship between habitus and field. Feminist theorists use standpoint epistemology to integrate structural analysis with attention to embodied, positioned knowledge. Each offers valuable insights, and contemporary sociology increasingly draws on multiple approaches rather than choosing between them. Integrative theories have significant strengths, but also important limitations. Their main strength is providing more comprehensive understanding than single level theories. They better capture the complexity of social life and overcome artificial divisions that have plagued sociology. They provide tools for analyzing both social stability and change within unified frameworks. However, they can become overly complex and difficult to test empirically. The quest for comprehensiveness may sacrifice analytical precision. Integration doesn't always succeed completely. Sometimes different theoretical elements remain loosely connected rather than genuinely synthesized. There's also risk of theoretical eclecticism, where elements from different theories are combined without careful attention to their compatibility. Integrative theories are increasingly relevant in our contemporary world. Global interconnectedness means that local events can have worldwide consequences and vice versa, requiring multiple level analysis. Digital technology blurs traditional micro-macro boundaries. A tweet can influence global politics, while algorithms shape individual behavior. Social movements now operate across multiple scales simultaneously, from local organizing to global networks. Complex social problems like climate change, inequality, or public health require comprehensive theoretical tools that can address both individual behavior and structural forces. Effective policy interventions must address both individual and structural factors rather than treating them as separate domains. As we conclude this chapter and our sequence, several takeaways emerge about integrative theory. Integration represents sociology's maturation beyond the artificial divisions that characterize earlier periods. The recognition that social life is too complex for single-level theories. Multiple strategies exist for bridging micro-macro gaps, from Emerson's networks to Giddens' duality to Bourdieu's practice theory. Concepts like duality and dialectical relationships are crucial for understanding how different levels of social life interconnect. Practice emerges as a key mediating concept that bridges structure and agency. Power and inequality remain central concerns as feminist theorists particularly emphasize. Finally, reflexivity, the ability to examine our own theoretical and social positions, is essential for sophisticated social analysis. Looking forward, we can expect continued efforts toward theoretical integration as sociology grapples with increasingly complex social phenomena. The digital age and globalization present new challenges that require sophisticated theoretical tools. Interdisciplinary approaches are becoming more common as social problems cross traditional academic boundaries. Applied sociology requires practical theoretical tools that can guide intervention and policy. Public sociology seeks to connect theoretical insights to pressing social issues and democratic participation. The integrative theories we've studied provide foundation for these future developments, showing how sociology can develop more comprehensive and practical, useful understanding of social life. Let's conclude with questions that help you apply these integrative theories to your own experiences and contemporary social issues. Consider which approach resonates most with your understanding of social life and why. Reflect on how you experience the relationship between agency and structure. When do you feel like you're making free choices versus being constrained by social forces? Think about how habitus might operate in your educational experiences. What taken for granted dispositions and cultural knowledge do you bring to academic settings? Consider how standpoint theory might change research practices and what perspectives might be privileged or marginalized. Finally, think about new social phenomena, from social media to climate change to AI, that require the kind of integrative analysis these theories provide. These questions help connect abstract, theoretical concepts to lived experience and contemporary challenges.